Adam recoiled as he uncovered the specimen. He was impressed with it, to be sure. A jar filled with tadpoles, and a large, mostly humanoid figure with tentacles. His students eyed it in terror. All had heard of this horrible monster. It was far too dangerous to ever bring one in alive. That was the nature of the Mind Flayer. Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. Today, let's look at another of our modern monsters, the Mind Flayer. Illithid, Geek, or Mind Flayer. To those who have traveled the forgotten realms of Dungeons and Dragons, you know them well. It is a horrible creature to say the least. Much of what is known is conflicting at times. Our monster begins its life as a tadpole, and they spend about a decade growing. Oh, and they are cannibalistic. Now, this is actually pretty common in amphibians, particularly with salamander tadpoles. Yeah, a very violent early life, but they are being preyed on by the elder brain, which I will get to in a bit. When they mature, they are implanted into a host. Most claim through the eye, but also the ear and nose. They will chew into the host's brain and replace it, and the process of ceremorphosis begins. At which point, the tadpole will replace the host's brain and personality. It will be basically helpless for the next week as the host body is completely reshaped. The important part is that it doesn't kill the host. If they aren't placed into a host, they will eventually turn into a neothelid, a large and chaotic carnivorous variant. Now, we can actually pinpoint exactly what part of the brain it starts with. The frontal lobe. This part of the brain controls emotions, movement, and making decisions. From there, it should go to the hypothalamus, which helps regulate the body. And from there, the two closest areas are the parietal lobe, which does spatial reasoning and objects. The other being the temporal lobe, which covers memory and speech. The furthest is the occipital lobe, which handles vision. Lastly is the brain stem and cerebellum, which focus more on the body's basic functions. It needs to be careful with this area. Any wrong damage would be instantly fatal. And we can actually figure out a few things about these tadpoles. It replaces the brain. That means it is capable of doing some electrical and synaptic processes of the brain. This process would have to pass through its skin, either done electrically or chemically. And guess what? We see this sort of behavior in real-world parasites. There are ones which will get their host to drown themselves, or perch in a place to get eaten and spread the parasite to their next host. From there, the tadpole alters their host, and guess what? This happens too, usually in fungus, in insects. So, 2 for 2. This is looking pretty plausible to exist. The full process of ceremorphosis isn't fully detailed. We can speculate that the tadpole is secreting some sort of DNA-based compound and hormone which spurs forth the changes. The final product is a creature which is roughly humanoid, a slighter build, but 2 arms and 2 legs, overly long fingers. But it is the head which stands out. It looks elongated, but its mouth is concealed behind 4 tentacles. And that mouth is filled with a circular row of teeth, and it uses these teeth to devour the brains of its victims. It is said that they need at least 1 brain from a sentient creature a month, but it does prefer to feed more often. It is said that it can go up to 4 months without eating at worst though. And we can pinpoint what it is eating. It seems that the Mind Flayer cannot produce enough neurotransmitters on its own. It needs to supplement them. It would seem that it needs dopamine and serotonin, are the most likely. There is also a psychic aspect to their feeding. Which absorbs memories of their victims. In time, Mind Flayer will lay a clutch of its own eggs to tend to. As for the tentacles, they are dexterous like those of an octopus or squid. and exactly the same. Except, it is said that the Mind Flayer does have a skull, unlike an octopus. This would be the reshaped skull of its host. They also possess psychic powers. The most likely means for such a power is by using the bioelectricity of its own nervous system to influence others, which could explain why it constantly needs to gather neurotransmitters from its victims. And there is no way to avoid touching on their society. Mind Flayers are arrogant. They see themselves as supreme beings, lords over all races. They will use their psychic powers to dominate and keep a thrall. While egotistical, they can cooperate with each other. How effectively is up for debate. But ultimately, they are controlled by an elder brain. This is a large carnivorous brain which feeds on the tadpoles. But its main purpose is commanding the Mind Flayers. It emits a psychic power of its own, which dominates the others. Think of it like a queen bee. It lives in a brine pool and serves as a repository of all the Mind Flayers' collective knowledge. It guides the others and is the end of their life cycle. And we do see something similar in nature too. The naked mole rat is a eusocial type of mammal. They have one breeding female, and the other females are sterile. The queen prevents them from maturing by a pheromone she secretes. This is a bit complicated, but we can use the same system here. The elder brain's psychic energy has the same effect. Impressive how much the Mind Flayer matches up with the things we see in nature. Now, just like the naked mole rat, if they get far enough away from the elder brain, the Mind Flayer can break free and make decisions for itself. This range and time frame are debated. How would you battle a Mind Flayer? It won't be easy. They can use their psychic powers to dominate a person. Mind control. You'll need to protect yourself, and that alone is an issue. They are also known to collect vast amounts of knowledge, and that includes forms of magic. This will be like fighting a powerful wizard. That means having a surplus of counter spells ready. Ideally, you won't fight them. A rogue might be the best option. If the Mind Flayer doesn't know that you are there, he will struggle to fight back. That is assuming the rogue has the mental fortitude to avoid being dominated. And then we have the thralls. If the Mind Flayer is a wizard, then the thrall would fill in any other role. The biggest issue is if it is used as a meat shield. Worse, if the thrall was a strong melee fighter. It'll cover many of the other weaknesses. And they will be found in colonies with hundreds of Mind Flayers. Yeah, bring some forces with you. But there is a central weakness to the colony, the elder brain. If you can take that out, it should disrupt the Mind Flayers enough to create an opening. This won't be easy. You're facing something incredibly intelligent with extensive access to magic and psychic powers. You'll need to put in plenty of work to win this fight, and why I'm going with a 7 of 10 for difficulty. You would do well to bring stealth and a party to this fight. Careful wandering into one of their colonies. Now, when I did a video on multi-species cities, a conversation came up regarding if humans and Mind Flayers could live cooperatively. And it is not a simple conversation. Mind Flayers are arrogant and see themselves as superior to humans. That will be an issue, but they are predictable. So long as the Mind Flayer believes that working with a human would advance its own goals, it is conceptually possible. Now, that means bringing supplies that it can't get, or access to forms of magic which they don't have, or projects that require the aid of multiple people. Yet, Mind Flayers are known to psychically dominate people, make them thralls. There is a risk of that happening to you. Do you trust the Mind Flayer? Chances are no. But even beside the major trust issues, the Mind Flayer eats brains. That of intelligent creatures. Yours. They need a brain at least once a month. Could a city offer up their criminals to the Mind Flayers? Of course. But how many criminals does a city have each month? Which deserves the death sentence? How long can you maintain it? These are all questions that will come up. And then we reach the real problem. How long before it gets used to punish dissenters? Eventually, I see it going this way. The Mind Flayer eventually dominates those in power and uses their influence to control and enslave the city. Ultimately, I don't think it would be safe to form a long-lasting alliance with a Mind Flayer, whether a rogue one or not. Adam looked at the dead Mind Flayer. Its dead eyes glared back at him. He felt uneasy seeing it, almost as if there was still intelligence behind it. One of his students turned abruptly and knocked the jar of tadpoles onto the floor, shattering it. The contents scattered about. Seeing them slide over the floor left him nervous, almost as if they were still alive too, just waiting. The Mind Flayer is a strange foe to be sure, but surprisingly mimics many traits we see in real animals. If you find one, be careful, and don't trust them. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Next time, let's look to one of the legendary spellcasters, Merlin. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.